Welcome, my friend, to Next Level Change Success. I'm Therese, a change strategist and practitioner with over 20 years of experience designing and delivering impactful change programs across various industries. In this podcast, I share real-world practical strategies to help you create and deliver positive change experiences, whether you're a leader, practitioner, or someone looking to bring new ways of working to life. In today's fast-paced world, change is constant. Here we focus on how you can put people at the centre of your change strategy, because people with a sense of purpose are the most important link in driving performance. So if you're ready to create meaningful change and achieve all the success that comes with it, keep listening. Together, let's change the conversation and take it to the next level. Hello. Welcome to another episode of Next Level Change Success. My name is Therese, and I am the founder of myvirtualchangemanager.com. I'd like to acknowledge that I'm recording on Tharawal country and pay my respects to the traditional owners and custodians on the land on which I am recording, and to elders both past, present, and emerging. So we're talking about what slows change down in an organisation, and sometimes the slowing down can cause a huge amount of frustration for the program team or the project team, and even the change team, of course, if there has been momentum built up. And I've had experience where there have been some sideswipes and blindsides with programs where there's been sellouts happening that, obviously as a project or program team we're not aware of. And so things have consciously slowed up through the decision-making process, and then it became apparent why. Then I've also had the instance of general management being changed, with the leader leaving the organisation suddenly. And that was a couple of days before a major launch, and having to handle the transition there. When it came to the piece of work and the rollout, had to do a major launch and then leadership changes. There are a number of reasons why change can slow down. Let's talk about some of those. In the event that if you're starting to experience a bit of a slowdown, my advice to you is not to panic. Take it in your stride. Know that there are things within your control and outside of your control. And I think it's really important at all times that you're constantly referencing that if you're finding your frustration start to build, because sometimes we're so delivery focused. And I've talked about this before, because I have had that awareness continually around when I'm driving to an outcome versus understanding the ebbs and flows with that. Being able to have focus, obviously, to create momentum. And yet if there are things outside of your control, the easiest path for yourself is just simply to accept that and do what you can. And if you're placed on hold, or if there's a total change in direction, accept that so that you can pivot, as they say in Friends, and that you can move along a different path as fast as possible and review everything in line with that decision making that might have happened. So let's go through a couple of scenarios. Also about some of the things that might be within your control, if not handled well, will delay your change or will have an impact on your change. One is around no strategic alignment. And this can really happen in organisations where you might have some of those cultural indicators where there's feedback coming through that people work in silos. And whilst many leaders, as a result of that, can get frustrated, so what they do is they essentially start to push their own agenda, and their focus is on what they want to deliver, knowing that it may not line up with the bigger picture or that there might be other priorities. And whilst that might seem appealing to that leader at that point in time because they get to drive the piece of work, they're feeling satisfied because finally they can move something forward. Whilst I empathise with that frustration, ultimately when you're rolling out the program, if it's not aligned, if the major decision holders, decision makers aren't across it enough, then it will be put on pause. And then the frustration, both with the project team, then the leader themselves, obviously is exacerbated, and that can cause conflicts within the organisation and major disruption for everyone. And it's extremely disappointing, but that can be, you have to keep your eye out or ear out to the ground around that whole silo mentality, because it doesn't serve the organization, nor its people, nor the people working on the change or the program. So if you're seeing that leader behave that way, if they're advising you, don't worry about so-and-so going to go ahead and do this anyway. When you ask about should we be talking with XYZ stakeholder, just brace yourself, because you might follow the directive that's given to you, then find that there are all sorts of issues as a result of that, and conflict that arises as a result of that, which if you're simply following direction, even when you've raised it, then that's all you can do. And you might want to raise that objection with other areas who haven't been connected in on the change, to just consciously slow it down so it does have connection across the organisation. So no strategic alignment will mean that your piece of work, once it gets to the surface, will be placed on hold. And I have seen it a huge amount of times, unfortunately, in organisations. We've come across a piece of work, asked what that piece of work is, find out that it's the pet project of one of the leaders. It's not connected in strategically. It might be duplicating the work that's getting done under another project or program. And these are the things that you really want to have the common sense discussion around alignment, really with the fact that everyone who's working on the different pieces of work are going to be annoyed, frustrated as a result of that lack of strategic alignment when eventually it gets closer to delivery. And so I'm a big driver and ambassador for efficiency, and it's very inefficient working that way. That is why in many organisations, when you're getting cultural indicators around working in silos, it's something you really need to lean into with your leadership team. And then also when it comes to change, having a single view of change or an enterprise view of change means that you can rationalize, prioritize, get on the same page, which helps your people so that then they don't feel like they've been pushing a piece of work along that has no home, that ends up being shelved, and they can perceive that as being an issue with the decision makers within the organisation. But the core issue is a lack of alignment. The second area in relation to change is a lack of confidence. Now that might be a lack of confidence in the project team. There might be a lack of confidence around the product or the solution getting tabled. And a lot of the lack of confidence comes down to a lack of visibility, a lack of engagement that can happen with certain leaders. So they might want to be consciously slowing down the development because they might be hearing from their people that they're not happy with what's getting tabled. And so therefore they go in and consciously slow down the change. A lot of the time it is warranted. If you were confident in your solution and you've engaged and consulted well, then you're not going to have those indicators come up. It might be around a lack of confidence regarding risk management, where there might be issues starting to arise, and therefore leaders start to step in and say, let's slow this down a little bit. We need to get a confidence that we're heading in the right direction. So they're the aspects of lack of confidence. It can sometimes have, I think a lot of the drivers will either have to do with a lack of engagement or a lack of awareness at the senior leadership level regarding the progress of the project itself, which can have the leaders start to get very nervous about delivery and then slow it down because of that nervousness. So how do you counter that lack of confidence? Of course, you do a lot more showcases, you're doing a lot more visibility with the leaders and with their subject matter experts who have been allocated to the project or program. And you might want to do that in the same room if you're finding different conversations or different feedback happens outside of the room than it does in the room, to manage those views of individuals and their leaders. Very important. That also kind of dovetails into the next level of slowing down a project or program, and that has to do with the senior leadership engagement. And really, when you have a subject matter expert sitting at the table, or you have a representative from the business area or someone who's providing input and collaborating on the project or program, you need to be very explicit that they need to be updating their leader. As a day-to-day, you're the point of contact for your leader. So if they have questions, rather than coming to me, you should be able to talk confidently to what is happening in the project or program. And sometimes that can not happen because of the us and them that typically arises culturally in organizations when you look at project teams or change teams, and people see it as, because they're outside of our business and business as usual. Well, they should be going to you because I don't know what the latest update is. You might have heard that said before, you might have heard that narrative before. And so really engaging the senior leadership frequently with updates via written update, email update, reporting cycles, showcases at pivotal moments, those type of things where even the subject matter experts can showcase to their leader versus you showcasing to the leader, I think is a really powerful message that it sends around collaboration and true co-design and ownership. Those type of things give really positive indicators to the senior leadership team. If they're not getting those updates, absolutely, before the rubber hits the road, they're going to slow things down so they can get across it and feel confident there's going to be exactly what their team needs. And regardless if you've had a subject matter expert actually working on the project or program for you, that senior leader is going to want to get involved. So do not assume that the subject matter expert or the technical expert who's been working with you the whole time, that's enough, because it never is. And I've had rewrites happen when it's gone to an executive leader. I've had to manage this kind of multiple tiering of feedback and working with the leaders on that and their subject matter experts in a room together. Nothing beats it when you can have both stakeholders around the table and you can talk to them about the feedback you've received and which direction do you head in, because it also gives the leader visibility around the contradictory information that you're receiving. So versus it being an issue, a you issue, it's actually showing the team dynamics that's happening in real time. And that's not an intent, but sometimes that can just be the experience because it's possibly what you're dealing with the different views. So senior leadership aspect. Then, of course, money. When it comes to budget, obviously if budgets are getting reviewed, if they're getting cut, if you haven't got momentum, then really budget reviews are going to slow down your project or program and your change. And this, as I said, depends upon the level of momentum that you've received or momentum you've got in your project or program. And this is where confidence building also blends into that. This is why it always surprises me that one of the key things that project leads or change leads don't really work on is the stakeholder engagement up front and making sure there's a really clear framework, there's really clear collaboration points, really clear to and fro that can happen between the leaders and the project team and the subject matter experts. Because when budgets are getting reviewed, if there isn't enough momentum in a piece of work and in a positive way that's strategically aligned, it could get shelved. The painstaking thing with budget reviews and implications of it is that you lose time. When you have someone saying, okay, I want to see all the documentation, I want to see the momentum. And then if you have turnover during that time of project representation or change representation, you're going to pay a price for that. And I think that in that budget review process, and I will put together, because I have had this real curiosity around this piece, and put together some scenarios where the time that's lost through review then increases the cost. And it would be a really interesting formula, and reach out to me if you have done this before, because I think it would be very fascinating. I don't think anyone ever has the mental capacity at that point in time where they're getting reviewed to show if you pause this project for 6 weeks and if you roll people off, if you decide to then ramp up again, it's going to probably cost you 2 to 3 more times that versus continuing along the path, do the review while you continue to progress. I think there's too much time lost and cost that simply gets glossed over, where if organisations were wanting to be really efficient, they should be able to review the program while it's still working its way forward and moving forward, address issues, scale the cost of issues that might be arising, and then make the hard decision to park it and not pick it up for 12 to 18 months, which essentially is almost like starting a new project or program, or continuing through, getting the confidence and then continuing on. So obviously budget reviews, if there's simply no budget, there's no budget, and things need to be stopped and people rolled off as soon as possible. And that's just the world of projects and programs. This is the reality. But if it's trying to decrease cost, or a project or program for some reason has been structured ineffectively, then you should try and achieve transition whilst maintaining momentum so that you can streamline but get the outcome you're after. And then the last point I want to make around what slows change down is a totally different perspective on change in general. If you're trying to introduce change in your business as usual environment without a framework, it is always going to be slower. If you don't have the right capabilities around the table and the right resource skills, whether that be allocated from business as usual, so existing skills within your organization, or bringing in certain skills to project manage and to change manage the change, it is going to be either a very poorly managed change, like I mentioned in the first element around no strategic alignment, so it might be quite siloed and delivered, then cause more problems, and then you're having to be troubleshooting problems. And it might take twice as long to deliver never be delivered because it has never been managed as a project or program. I've seen this in some organizations with frustrated business as usual people. So people in BAU, I keep saying business as usual. That's because I'm trying to distinguish between the everyday operations of the organization and then a project which has been mandated and formed up and resourced appropriately or resourced to a level anyway to deliver. If within that day-to-day operations, people are trying to deliver change on top of their day jobs without the right capability, without even understanding change management and how it works, then it's just going to be messy, or it's never going to get delivered. And I absolutely have walked into organizations where there has been all of this legacy work. So it's not like the thinking isn't there. It's not like the intent hasn't been there. It's just it hasn't been progressed and it hasn't been able to be delivered. And there's no continuous improvement framework for people to work with. And thus why having designed the framework, as well as some other key elements around being able to deliver change in a day-to-day business as usual environment, whether you're a technical expert or not, this is for everyday continuous improvement. And I developed that because you probably don't have the appetite for a full end-to-end change framework, a in-depth, here's 6 templates to complete, and you're probably needing to deliver change pretty fast. And by having that framework, you're going to be able to speed up your ability to deliver change in your organization as you build that capability, build the experiences, and deliver continuously and deliver similar types of change. Then you'll have an appreciation that if you, as a result of some of these changes, then all of a sudden have a huge change you want to bring in. So a project as such, that you can fund that, you can resource it, and you can leverage the experience that these individuals have had in a semi-project way to then be able to expand and broaden those skills and scale them so that you can deliver even bigger projects as a result of this fast change formula. Anyway, if that's of interest, come to myvirtualchangemanager.com because we run the course twice a year. We're about to open our doors to the course and there are limited seats, so important to jump onto that registration list if that's something of interest. That can speed up your change because change can actually be fast and it can be effective. Now, just want to cover off and close out what can slow down change. No strategic alignment. We're working in silos. That's going to slow down the change eventually. Lack of confidence. Senior leaders not being engaged or on board. budgets, if they're getting reviewed. So budget cycles are important to know and to be aware of, because it could slow down the process as budgets get reviewed if you haven't got momentum in your piece of work. And then, of course, having no framework is going to slow down your ability to deliver change. And I don't mean a convoluted framework. It's just the fastest path that you can get from A to B. Okay, I hope this episode has helped you. I hope that you might go back and consider your change in light of this and think, okay, are we really connected in where we need to be? Have we got the confidence of our stakeholders or our senior leaders across it? When's the budget cycle? Should we be aware of that? Are we far enough along? Have we got momentum? Are we aligned? So, are we confident that we're heading past that point of no return? And then have we got a change framework as such? And as I said, come to my virtual change manager if that is of interest. I hope you have a wonderful day. And if you're thinking about all things change related and you know people as well who are interested in these topics, please subscribe. First of all, it helps people be able to find us. Leave us a review, provide me with feedback, go to myvirtualchangemanager.com. I'm also at My Virtual Change Manager on Instagram, Facebook, we have a group, and on LinkedIn. So come and join the preferred channel, or also on YouTube, so that you can join the change conversation and we can change the way that we approach change, because change matters, because your people matter. Have a great day.